The SCP Wiki is the largest collaborative writing project in human history. It centers around the SCP Foundation, a secret organization that works to secure and contain supernatural anomalies in order to protect the general public. These range from eldritch gods to objects that do random strange things. The SCP Wiki has over 8,000 SCP articles, and in my time reading the SCP Wiki, these are some that have stood out to me. This video is about the 4 most disturbing SCPs from the SAFE class. The designation SAFE doesn't necessarily mean that the SCP isn't dangerous. Rather, it's a measure of how difficult it is to contain it. SAFE class SCPs can be just as dangerous and disturbing as an SCP that's harder to contain. First off is SCP-1562. SCP-1562 is a mostly normal metal tube inside a kid's playground. The mysterious effects of the slide occur when someone slides down it headfirst with their hands at their sides. Anyone who does this will immediately go missing without a trace. For testing purposes, the SCP Foundation sent a member of the D-Class down the slide. The D-Class of the SCP Foundation are mostly made up of death row criminals, or so the Foundation claims, and are used as human test subjects for anomalies. When the D-Class went down the slide headfirst with his arms at his side, he found himself trapped inside an extremely tight rock tunnel. The line that would have been used to pull him out was severed, so he was trapped. After wiggling around a bit, he found a small shoe belonging to a child. The D-Class then heard the voice of a child screaming and crying for his mom. The SCP Foundation then attempted to send in another D-Class to rescue them, but he got stuck too. It's likely that they all suffocated eventually. However, the fact that there were kids still alive in there after the Foundation had contained SCP-1562 for long enough to send in a D-Class leads me to wonder whether the anomaly has some supernatural way of keeping its inhabitants alive. This SCP is one of the most disturbing on the site in my opinion. Reading about this child graveyard is enough to give anyone claustrophobia. This next SCP is perhaps even more disturbing. It deals with the idea of doing the same thing over and over again. SCP-1733 Season Opener by BB Aztec. SCP-1733 is a tape of the 2010 to 2011 NBA season opener between the Boston Celtics and Miami Heat. The anomaly was discovered when someone on Facebook complained about and showed a recording of a foul that never happened in the actual game. The Foundation then recovered the DVR containing that recording. What they discovered was that everyone in the recording is sentient. They retain some memory of previous playbacks of the recording, and they slowly become aware of the fact that they are trapped in a DVR. The cause of this remains unknown. The Foundation began testing SCP-1733 by playing the tape back over and over again. On playback 015, a vague recollection of previous playbacks of the tape caused the teams to not score against each other for 8 consecutive possessions. By playback 026, the Miami Heat had adjusted to the Celtics' offense so well that they were able to win, which the announcers found odd. In playback 027, the announcers noted a feeling of déjà vu, and one of them referenced the Celtics winning back the hearts of their fans after a previous embarrassment, though he didn't remember what that embarrassment was. By playback 044, players and fans began reporting that they had already dreamt of the season opener. In playback 045, the players refused to play, and instead tried to escape to no avail. From that point on, everything was recorded with a small broadcast view camera. In playback 051, the first recorded violent incident occurred as escape efforts continued. In playback 052, the person injured in the last playback killed his previous attacker. By playback 055, the crowd was able to remember things outside of the arena. In playback 065, factions began to form, including a cult known as the Faith Keepers who burned sacrifices of modern technology to escape. As the playbacks continued, conditions worsened. In playback 073, 3 men injured themselves in an escape attempt. The Faith Keepers grew in numbers. In playback 095, gratuitous displays of sex and violence occurred. In playback 112, fans began jumping to their deaths. In further replays, Faith Keepers ritually sacrificed LeBron James and Paul Pierce, displaying their remains on the Jumbotron. Eventually, they began demanding child sacrifice, which led to war between the groups. The record ends with the arena lights turning deep red. After this, testing ceased as it was causing too much distress to the people in the tape. As funny as the concept of LeBron James being ritually sacrificed is, I and many others find this to be one of the most terrifying SCPs on the site. The idea of being forced by some unknown entity to relive the same events over and over again is terrifying, and has made me a bit wary of basketball games. But for a slightly less disturbing SCP, we have one of the most famous SCPs in the Safe class, which tells a story of an alternate reality in which something very horrible and mysterious was discovered, causing the Foundation to completely change its goals. This is SCP-5000, The Suit by Tanhoney. SCP-5000 is a mechanical, non-functioning suit that appeared in a flash of light in SCP-579's containment chamber. Inside the suit was a corpse identical to Foundation researcher Pietro Wilson, who was alive and well. There was also a collection of files. The files record Pietro Wilson's experiences with SCP-5000 before his death. It says that the Foundation site where Pietro was working was attacked and everyone else was killed, but he was able to fight off his attackers with the help of SCP-5000. He thought the attackers were from the Chaos Insurgency, a group opposed to the Foundation, but they had all the credentials of an SCP Foundation task force member. Pietro managed to reach a Foundation safe house and was going to ask his superiors what was going on, when he saw a message from the SCP Foundation 05 Council, the secret leaders of the SCP Foundation. The message was sent to all of the governments, news organizations, and anomalous agencies in the world. The message stated, "For those who are not currently aware of our existence, we represent the organization known as the SCP Foundation. Our previous mission centered around the containment and study of anomalous objects, entities, and other assorted phenomena. This mission was the focus of our organization for more than 100 years. Due to circumstances outside of our control, this directive has now changed. Our new mission will be the extermination of the human race. There will be no further communication." The SCP Foundation immediately began their brutal assault on humanity. They circulated the face of SCP-096, an entity that kills anyone who sees his face, all throughout social media. They detonated nuclear charges along the back of SCP-169, the Leviathan, causing it to stir in its sleep. SCP-169 is so big that it caused tsunamis and earthquakes all over the world. SCP-662, a butler named Mr. Deeds that would perform almost any task you gave to him, began assassinating several world leaders. SCP-610, the incredibly infectious flesh that hates virus, was released in several population centers throughout the world. The combined efforts of the Global Occult Coalition and the Church of the Broken God managed to stop SCP-610 before it infected the whole world. SCP-682, the hard-to-destroy reptile who hates all of humanity, was released. While Pietro continues to wonder why the Foundation has turned evil, the Global Occult Coalition, the UN-backed enemy to the SCP Foundation who kills anomalies instead of containing them, worked to fight against the SCP Foundation. Pietro then observed a group of Foundation MTF soldiers standing in a line in front of their commander. The commander stabbed all of the soldiers in the shoulder with a knife, and only soldier number 8 reacted in pain. When she saw this, the commander shouted, "Got a live one!" and all the other soldiers quickly killed him. Pietro then partook on the dangerous trek to Site-19 to try to get some answers. When he got there, most of the anomalies were freed, and the staff was walking around with something seeming inhuman about them. By accessing the Foundation database, Pietro was able to piece together what happened before the SCP Foundation declared war on humanity. The SCP Foundation had tried to map out the collective human subconscious, the psychosphere. They found something in there, but it was redacted. After this, the O5 Council and Ethics Committee unanimously voted for something, but it was again redacted. Then a series of redacted instructions was sent to all Foundation senior staff and site directors, leading to a wave of suicides and resignations. The Foundation then sent out files containing pictures accompanied by the message, "Harden your hearts." Suicides and resignations then ceased with the dissemination of some material. The Foundation then executed most human anomalies, human sympathetic anomalies, and staff. It was then that they declared war on humanity. As Pietro read, the SCP Foundation continued their attempts to erase humanity. All television channels showed SCP-1730 ranting about how he'll take over the world. SCP-1048 released a horde of bears into Paris. SCP-1290 was used to launch projectiles at a global occult coalition secure base, the latest in a series of unsuccessful attempts to kill the humans inside. This base was called Ganzir. SCP-1440, a man who won back his life from the brother's death in a game of cards, who is now cursed with spreading death wherever he goes, was sent from refugee camp to refugee camp. Containment measures for SCP-1678, a replica of London located 1 kilometer under the real London, ceased. The British Occult Service, also known as MI666, led refugees to SCP-1678. The Foundation then detonated a nuke they had planted inside of SCP-1678. 3 months passed, and Pietro found himself traveling across the country with a briefcase. All he knew was that the briefcase contained an object that wasn't round. Pietro doesn't remember anything except that he needs to bring this object to SCP-579. What SCP-579 is exactly is unknown, as its entire description is expunged from the record. We can assume it's quite dangerous, whatever it is. The journey to SCP-579's containment chamber is long, but every time Pietro opened his briefcase, he suddenly found himself miles ahead with no memory of what happened previously. The SCP Foundation continued to wage war against humanity by releasing more anomalies. This included destroying SCP-2000, the Deus Ex Machina, capable of bringing back dead people in the case of an XK-class end-of-the-world scenario. Pietro sat down with some global occult coalition soldiers and was able to access their database and find out some news about their stronghold, Ganzir. He is able to find an interrogation with a Foundation Task Force soldier that was conducted inside of Ganzir. The soldier, Samuel Ross, was the only Foundation member who would talk. When asked why he killed so many innocent people, Ross only laughed and pointed out how the GOC was foolish if they thought they could stop the destruction of Ganzir. Quickly after that, Ganzir began to fall apart. Normally, the SCP Foundation says that they die in the dark so that humanity can live in the light. Here, Ross says that the SCP Foundation fights in the light so that humanity can die in the dark. His last word is disgusting. Pietro was starting to lose morale. The GOC stronghold, Ganzir, had been entirely destroyed. Resistance to the SCP Foundation was struggling, and the Foundation continued to release anomalies on survivors. Pietro discovered Foundation MTF soldiers made of stone that attack you the moment you look away from them. He also saw a group of Foundation soldiers fighting an anomaly, which he found odd despite the fact that it was the Foundation's normal task. He saw a kid die but chose not to save her. The SCP Foundation continued to release anomalies in an attempt to kill Pietro and all the other survivors. Pietro eventually found a girl sitting in an abandoned jewelry store. The girl had a ruby medallion around her neck, which Pietro recognized as SCP-963, the medallion that contains the consciousness of senior Foundation researcher Dr. Bright. Pietro sat down for a conversation with Dr. Bright and found out that he too wants to stop the SCP Foundation from erasing humanity. Dr. Bright reveals that the file the O5 sent out to all senior staff contained mimetic imagery designed to make people want to kill all of humanity. It didn't work on him because he was protected by SCP-963. He didn't know why the Foundation had suddenly gone rogue, and said that he was going to try to escape to another dimension. Pietro said he was going to SCP-579's containment chamber, and Dr. Bright said that even he doesn't know what SCP-579 is. They went their separate ways knowing that they'll both probably die. After a long journey, Pietro finally reached the site where SCP-579 is held. He still had his briefcase, which is implied to contain SCP-055, the ultimate anti-meme. Anyone who comes into contact with SCP-055 will forget any and all experiences they had with it, so no one actually knows what SCP-055 is. Pietro suddenly felt that SCP-579 was watching him. SCP Foundation MTF agents found him too, but he was able to escape with the help of his suit. He finally reached SCP-579's containment chamber, only to realize that SCP-579 is located far beneath the ground and that he will die of falling delivering the briefcase down. He knew that it was his destiny to die for humanity. In his last moments, he wondered why the Foundation was killing everyone. Why did they send out those files? Why did Ganser fall? Why is he taking a briefcase across the world? Finally, he jumped, throwing SCP-055 to SCP-579 and died. The meeting of SCP-055 and SCP-579 caused time to be reset before the SCP Foundation discovered the entity, making things go back to normal. So all in all, there is a lot going on in this story and a lot that remains ambiguous. But there is a second file linked within the SCP-5000 file, which I didn't discover until making this video. It records a conversation between some Foundation researchers and SCP-682, the hard-to-destroy reptile who famously finds humans disgusting. SCP-682 was trapped in the SCP Foundation's hydrochloric acid chamber, which he usually is. Suddenly, he was freed. He saw the eyes of the researchers who freed him and said, "You are free." The researcher responded, "Yes, and so are you." SCP-682 asked how this had happened, and the researcher explained how they had explored SCP-5000, the human psychosphere, and how they had found something that SCP-682 called the Entity. SCP-682 recognized that the SCP Foundation had not only discovered the Entity, but also the toll it has on humanity. According to SCP-682, the Entity is intertwined with the idea of pain, so being freed from it frees one from pain. The Entity also requires pain to continue existing, which is why it doesn't allow people to truly die. Instead, they remain fully conscious as their body decomposes and then exist in smaller and smaller forms. This is SCP-2718, which I will be discussing in a future video. The researchers asked how SCP-682 can live with knowledge of the Entity, and SCP-682 said that it is disgusting, which the researchers said wasn't a strong enough word. As long as the Entity exists, then every human to have existed must experience eternal pain. The researchers said that they had a cure for the infection of the Entity, but they couldn't get it to everyone, or else the Entity would notice. They had to kill all of the people who were not cured of the Entity in order to erase it from existence and end the eternal pain of the dead. SCP-682 said that he will do his part, likely freeing himself from eternal pain in the process, as he too cannot die as long as humanity survives. Unfortunately, SCP-682 and the SCP Foundation failed in their quests to wipe out humanity, as Pietro Wilson was influenced by the Entity to reset time. Now the Entity still exists. The lore with the Entity and its relations to other SCPs actually goes a bit deeper, and led me down a whole power scaling rabbit hole, but that's for another video. I really like this story, and the mystery throughout it caused me to read it very quickly in my first read-through. It's a great 5000th SCP as it acts as a sort of love letter to the fandom that ties together a lot of other SCPs like SCP-682 and SCP-2718, while pulling off a reversal of how those stories usually go with the SCP Foundation trying to save humanity. Last off in the video we have SCP-7179, which may be another SCP that the entity uses to torture people for all of eternity. SCP-7179 looks on the surface like heaven, but it has some key differences to heaven that end up making it much more like hell. SCP-7179, E is for Eternity, by Calwold. SCP-7179 is a series of extra-dimensional cubic spaces measuring roughly 10 kilometers on all sides. Upon death, any human will be transported to SCP-7179 with perfect health. On the surface, SCP-7179 looks like paradise. It is a tropical desert island surrounded by an ocean. Attempting to swim to the edge of the ocean just warps you back to the other side. The temperature is always perfect, the sun never sets, and there are no winds or waves. There are many types of edible tropical fruits in SCP-7179, as well as alcohol and plant-based drugs. There are several varieties of tropical birds, butterflies, and domestic pigs. There is also a beach house containing 3 individuals with no real will of their own that are suited to the desires of the person within SCP-7179. It is possible to be injured inside of SCP-7179, and it does hurt, but it's impossible to die. The SCP Foundation was able to build a construct that they could use to observe someone in SCP-7179. They used it to observe Paul Hiddleston, a 34-year-old man who died of brain cancer. Upon arrival, Hiddleston was happy and engaged in pleasurable activities. But after 2 years, he started using drugs more frequently than the other activities. After 3 years, he stopped eating altogether. He attempted to converse with the women in the beach house, but they had no agency or individuality. After 5 years, he ceased all of his prior activities and spent most of his time wandering around. After 6 years, Hiddleston tried to build a raft to escape SCP-7179, but after failing multiple times, he collapsed in despair for several days. After 7 years, he began learning cooking, hunting animals, and constructing farms. His mental state began to improve. 11 years later, he had become an expert at cooking. 29 years after that, he began showing signs of boredom and weariness. After 81 years in SCP-7179, Hiddleston was again depressed. He decided to take up building. 20 years later, he managed to construct his first house. In the next 186 years, he covered the island in structures made of wood, and frequently worked to maintain and upgrade them. After 416 years in SCP-7179, Hiddleston had turned each structure into a usable and decorated house. He also created several boats. After 850 years, he began to run out of resources, so he began tearing down his structures and rebuilding them. Over the next 1,200 years, Hiddleston's mental state continued to deteriorate as he seriously considered the concept of eternity. After 5,478 years, he tore down his whole village for no real reason and began rebuilding. After 11,902 years, he attacked the 3 women and tore them apart. He then attempted to drown himself, but he couldn't. He continued to build while also regularly harming himself. After 19,600 years, the 3 women were fully healed, and Hiddleston began experimenting upon them. After 124,000 years, Hiddleston attempted to crush himself with a crude stone structure, but it caused serious injury to him, though it didn't kill him. After 900,000 years, Hiddleston was completely healed. The process was very painful to him, but it provided relief from boredom, so he repeated it. After 5.8 million years, Hiddleston burned himself to the point of being ashes. After 16 million years, he was fully healed. He attempted many other methods of ending himself over the next millions of years, but each time was more numb to the pain. After 1.2 billion years, he stopped thinking rationally as he struggled to entertain himself. After 8.5 billion years, Hiddleston tried to escape and failed. After 30 billion years, he looked toward the sun. It had not set. After 1 trillion years in SCP-7179, Hiddleston ceased physical activity as there was no new stimulus that he could experience. After 5 times 10 to the power of 28 factorial, an unimaginably large number of years, all potential permutations of particles within SCP-7179 had been reached. After a Google factorial years, that's a 1 with 100 zeros times every whole number smaller than it, 1 second of eternity had passed. This story and some others we covered today are horrifying to me because they truly help you understand the concept of infinity. I get bored doing nothing for a few hours, and in this story, Hiddleston has to do nothing for eternity. Almost every other horrible fate in fiction ends eventually, but this never ends. It goes on forever, which is really horrific if you think about it for more than 10 seconds. Most Christians teach that all souls live forever. There are 2 places where the soul can reside for eternity. One can be in the presence of God forever. God is the giver of all good gifts and the source of infinite joy, so each moment can be better than the last. One moment you have infinite joy, the next you have infinite joy plus 1, the next you have infinite joy plus 2. It is always changing, and boredom is nothing but a distant memory. But if someone rejects God, God gives them what they want. And this is where SCP-7179 comes in. If someone wants no part in God, they will be separated from him for all eternity. Since God is the source of all good things, apart from him there can be no good thing. That is why hell is so terrible. Eternal suffering, constant pain, always stagnant, never changing, forever aloneness, just like SCP-7179. That is why I think SCP-7179 is one of the most accurate depictions of hell in fiction, right up there with an SCP I'll be covering in my next video on the SCP Foundation. Until then, I hope my description of eternal conscious torment didn't give you existential dread too badly. I promise there's a lot more to Christianity than just the bad news. In fact, in the next video I'll be getting back to the good news, such as how God frees you from hell. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and thank you for watching.